Hello Reborners, my name is Karen and this is Making Dolls with Karen. We're back with Liam. We're working on a tutorial on him and this is how he looks now. As promised, he looks like he hasn't even been painted at all, but he has. He does have, sitting here in front of the doll, I can see that he is a different color. But on camera, he just looks like blank vinyl. I know that from watching other people paint. But anyway, we are ready now to put on another color. So we're going to move on to the next color, and this is it. This is called Warm Blush, and it's dripping. It is a blushy color that is a little bit warmer than normal blush colors. It warms them up a bit. It gives them a different color tone to their skin. It looks very, very dark, but it's not really all that dark. And so we're going to apply 2 coats of this paint onto him as well. He's had his bake, so he's fully ready for another round of paint. So we're going to do the same thing we did with the other coat of paint, only it's a different color. So here we go. Well, if I can get the lid off of this. You want to get it off of your fingers, so when you touch your doll, you're not leaving funny looking fingerprints on. Here's my sponge. I've already used it, but it's okay. You can use it again. Make sure every time you put your brush into this paint, you mix it, because if you look at it, you'll see it separates very rapidly. Okay, you want to make sure most of the paint is off of your brush, because when you start swiping on the baby's face, you don't want it to run. Okay, here we go. We're going to just start doing him just like we did the other coat. We'll brush his eyes and his nose and up inside of his nose and his mouth, under his chin, way under his chin, all the way down to his rim almost. Okay, and then we're going to do his ears and behind his ears, and this one as well. And I like to do this space underneath the ears because it's got all those little creases in it. And then we're going to switch to our sponge. And we're going to do the same thing we did before. We're going to still sponge the areas that we also brushed, just in case we can get our sponge into some of those places and give him a sponge effect instead of a brush effect. The sponge effect is much nicer. I went through a phase where I was just putting the paint on with the paintbrush, and this is why we don't do that. I started to notice that even though I pounced it like this afterwards, I could still see brush strokes on part of my doll. And so I decided, nope, I'm going back to the sponges. At one point, it was during COVID, it was really, really hard to get these Whisper sponges that I like so much. They were just very, very expensive. Only a few vendors on Amazon had them, and that was the only place I could find them, was on Amazon at that time. And they were highly expensive. And I said, you know what? I just can't pay $13 or $14 for a little pack of sponges. That's just ridiculous. And so I decided, you know what? I'll just brush it. I was brushing it on with a paintbrush and kabukiing it off. And it was not beneficial. I started to notice that the dolls looked funny. You could see swipe marks, you could see uneven paint. It just wasn't working out. And luckily, the market opened back up a little bit. A lot more vendors means a lot more competition, so people start bringing their prices down. But when you're about the only vendor that has them, you can pretty much charge all you want. But anyway, I was able to get sponges again, and I was very happy about it. And okay, this is coat 1. We've done 1 coat on him. It doesn't change him that much, but he is getting darker. After this coat, you'll be able to tell he has paint on him. After this 2 coats, we're going to do 2 coats on him. I don't know why I felt the need to re-dip that brush. I don't think I needed to have too much paint on the brush after a while if you keep doing that. You can usually, the only parts I ever paint is that little bit on the face, and then I do the hands and feet, because the sponge is not reaching basically any of the hands and the feet. Okay, after this coat, we will check his, well, after the 2 coats of this color, we will check his nails and his lips again. And if we think they need any more paint, we will do that, because this is our last chance to do that. Because on the next coat, which is going to be regular blush, we are going to be tipping the nails. And we don't want to tip the nails on the same step that we paint the nails, because, well, the nail color isn't all that quick to dry. And if you're putting it on, chances are it's not going to get dry enough to also tip the nails before you need to tip the nails. And then you'll be rubbing off some of the color off the nails trying to tip them. So this round will be the last chance to get the lips right and the nails. Not the lips. You could do the lips again next time, but the nails for sure. So we're going to be looking at those again. Chances are they're fine, but if by chance you can't get them right on this step, you either have to do an additional step at the end to tip the nails, or just don't tip them, because it's almost impossible. One time I tried to tip the nails right after I painted them, and I did tip them, but they didn't look very good. So I was trying to be very, very careful not to brush off any of the nail color, and I ended up not doing a very good job tipping them. So long story short, see how the paint just builds up in that sponge? When I first started Liam, this was a new sponge. Well, I also used it on Frankie, so it does build up. At first, when you first start using it, you can't even notice hardly anything is getting on it. But after a few different dolls, it starts to look like that. It still works, but it starts to get wet, and when it's wet, you need to pounce it around on your paper towel a little bit and get some of that wet out so it can actually soak up more paint. Otherwise, you're just not doing anything when you're pouncing it around. That's also why I use this drier one. Once you've taken the big off with that, this one will finish getting the rest of it off, because one just gets too dirty all by itself. We're going a little faster this time because, well, you've seen me already do this exact same thing with the other color. And this is the same process. It's just another color. We're going to do the same thing exactly. And this coat will darken him up a bit. And they just start to look like they have life in them after a little while. You're seeing them come alive. And that's part of the magic of doing this art. It's very, very rewarding to see your little creations starting to look real instead of just like a hunk of plastic. That's what they look like when they're not painted. They just look like, well, it's a plastic doll, you know, what do you expect? And then it starts to go, well, it looks like it's having a little life in it now. It's looking a little like a baby. Liam is an artist kid. He's not going to look as real as a Reborn, but he'll look cute. He's a cute little baby. And we're going to do his arms real quick. Chances are we'll be done with this step very, very quickly. Might have to bounce over to the stove and take those eggs off. I'm trying to cook a birthday dinner for my sister, and it's if I keep repeating myself, it's because I can't tell. I can't remember if I said it in this video or in Frankie's video. I'm doing them both side by side. As soon as I turn off the camera from one and get it in the oven, I'm doing the other one. It's really that quick. But stuff gets to the critical point over there on the stove, and you're in the middle of a video, you got to get up and go take it off the stove or it might burn or something. I don't want anything boiling dry or boiling over or burning or any of those things. So might have to go take something off the stove here in a second, while we're giving Liam a second or two extra to dry. I don't really like having to use the heat gun. I do use it. And if you don't have a heat gun, you're always feeling like you need a heat gun. But then when you have it, you don't want to use it. Isn't that weird? It's like it's noisy. And if I think he's dry enough, I usually just go in and put the paint on him without even using the heat gun. But I was trying to show y'all how the heat gun works. So this time we may just do it without the heat gun. I think I need a little tiny bit more paint in on my sponge. I'm not getting the color I want on the doll. I'm having to pounce too much, so there we go. This is the last piece on the first layer. And then we'll be going back around and doing his head over. I try to do the limbs in the same order I did them in the first time, because that way you're doing the driest piece first. But it's really hard sometimes to remember which one you did what way. That's why using your drying rack is beneficial. You just put them boom, boom, boom down the row, and then you know which one you did first, instead of just laying them willy-nilly on the table like I do. I'm the rule breaker. You'll find that out. I'll say, don't do this, and then you'll see me doing the very same thing I said don't do. I was raised by a mother that said, do as I say, not as I do. So, she did not lead by example. This first layer of this color is pretty light too, but 2 layers is dark enough. You don't want to get your doll too dark. Then at the end you're going, oh, can it be Mexican or Indian or something, because it don't look white, you know. You don't want it that dark, so that's why I limit my number of coats of each color. You just have to sort of trust the process. Okay, that's the first coat. So I'm going to run check those eggs. They're probably getting close to boiling dry. And in a minute, I'm gonna have to get the cornbread out of the oven. If you live in a place where they don't make cornbread, I feel bad for you. Cornbread is so delicious. Okay, now we're gonna go start back on his head. Looks dry enough to me. I'm not gonna do the heat gun. So here we go. We're just gonna start putting paint back on him. And after the end of this coat, we're going to check his nails and his lips. Putting the paint over the top of the nails and the lips does not hurt it. It will sort of mute the color a tiny, tiny bit, insignificantly so usually. Except on the first couple of coats, it might do it a little bit more because it's just so light, you know. But it's better than trying to miss those areas to me. Because if you're trying to miss those areas, you're going to miss a little part around the edges too of the lips. It needs to be painted and it's going to look funny. I'm not doing micro painting with a magnifying glass and a tiny, tiny brush to miss those lips. And I say kudos to people who does it, but I'm not going to do it. I'm telling y'all this because I do not make biracial dolls because I can't get the color right. So recently I got a tip. I get tips all the time from people saying, this is what I did when I was trying to do that. And of course, you know me, I'm going to try them. Even if it's not on camera, I am going to try them. Sometimes I don't try them on camera because they turn out to be a fiasco and I don't want to be doing that on camera. So I try it first and then I make a video. But I recently wanted to make at least a biracial doll. I didn't know if I could get the skin tone all the way down to African American or not. But, you know, you can get it down to biracial easier because biracial can be, even African American can be different colors, different darknesses. People are just not all the same skin tone, not even in white or Indian or any of those. People are just different skin tones. Some people are just darker than other people, and some people lighter. It's just part of being human, I guess. But I couldn't get the color right. And this lady gave me this tip. She said, have you tried using RIT dye? And I think almost everybody knows what RIT dye is. RIT dye is used to dye clothing. You can get purple and make your green, your white shirt. I wouldn't recommend making a green shirt purple, but you can make your white shirt purple or whatever color you want to make it by buying dye. And she said, they have a new kind of RIT dye, and I don't know how new it is. It's called Dye More, because you can dye more than just fabric with it. And she said, all you have to do is get you a big pot that will allow you to submerge your pieces completely without them touching the sides, because the pot has to be hot, the water has to be nearly boiling. So with the pot being that hot, you don't want your pieces to touch the edge, because that hot pot could actually melt the doll. And even if it doesn't, she said if it touches the side, it'll put a darker color on your doll in that area. So I got me a big old stock pot from Walmart. It was pretty cheap. I got the Mainstays one, so it was real cheap. And I think it was 8 quarts. I'm not sure. That's 2 gallons. I didn't fill it all the way up because I didn't want to use that much dye, but I filled it up and I tested it with water first to see if I could submerge the doll completely without it touching the sides or the bottom, and I could. So I put it on to boil, and she said you don't need much dye at all. When the water starts to just breaking a boil, starting to get those little bubbles coming up, before it's rolling boil, you know, put your dye in. And she said you don't need much, just put a little. And I just poured a little in. I didn't even measure it. And it was very little. I still have most of the bottle. And chocolate brown's the color you're supposed to use. And I proceeded to dip a head in it. She said dip it, you know, down, hold it a few seconds, like 30, 40 seconds, rinse it off with cold water. Okay? And if you don't like the color, do it again and keep repeating that process until you like the color. So I said, okay, let's try that. So I did that, and it did dye the doll, and it did look like it was biracial. And then after I finished doing that, I sealed the doll, because I didn't want it just felt like it felt slick, like a blank kit to me, and I don't like that. Sealer gives a texture to your doll, and you can feel it, and you can tell that it has a texture to it, and it makes it also hold paint better, and I wanted to give her enhancements. So I felt like I needed to seal her. So I did. I sealed her, baked her twice, came back and started blushing her and painting her lips and stuff. And she came out pretty good. The only problem was, you know, dark-skinned people, the palms of their feet and the palms of their hands and the soles of their feet are lighter. And I couldn't figure out how to do that, because you have to dip the doll. You dip it, all of it gets painted. And I still can't figure out how to do that. I thought about putting something else on those areas to make it not color, but I don't know what you do. And so I did 2 dolls. I did Lalani and Ruby. And they're up on, ooh, that's a lot of paint in that sponge. Look how much paint's in that sponge. That's too much. But I'm going to dab it off. This is why we dab our dolls. Too much paint can get on our dolls. And sometimes we can't see that it's too much paint. But I can absolutely see this is too much paint. I'm going to be dabbing this one for a while, it looks like. But I shouldn't have to put any more in my sponge, that's for sure. If you get that dark of paint on there, you need to be super careful about getting all of it off, because you don't want super bad rashes or spots or anything on your doll. And you're going to get some anyway because you're going to miss some spots and you're going to end up with some boo-boos on your dolls. And then you have to try to cover them up with some special mark or something. And it's not as easy as it might sound or seem. One of our dolls that we do in this follow along series, we'll give a baby scratch or something so you can see how to do one of those. And if you have a flaw in your doll, like the cheek has a little bit of a rash on it or something, you can usually cover it with something like a baby scratch or something. And that will give your doll a little chance to not be a boo-boo baby. But you're going to make some boo-boos. You are. Your dolls, you're going to have some boo-boo babies. I had plenty of them. Some of them I donated to the nursing home, which really, really enriches somebody's life. And some of them I sold as boo-boo babies. Because you have to make some money or you just can't keep it up. It's just too hard to do. Spending all your money making dolls and then donating them. So I put them up for sale. I put all of them up for sale. I gave them a reasonable length of time to sell at a much reduced price because they were a boo-boo. I called them starter dolls and bargain babies, or give them some sort of a name like that. And then be honest about your doll and tell people she's got a big space on her arm that looks like a rash. Covers up nicely with clothing or something like that. And then have the price reflect that. You can even put in the listing, normally she would have cost this, but because she's a boo-boo, she costs this, you know. And that way people know that you've already reduced the price because they're a boo-boo, you know. Because a lot of people go, well, since she's a boo-boo, will you knock $50 off? Well, I've already done that, you know. So you want them to know that I've already compensated you, you know, made some sort of a compensation for the fact that they're boo-boos by making the price cheaper. And then you can sell them. But whichever one's in your reasonable length of time, I don't know, 6 months or something, if you still have them, consider donating them. There are so many people in nursing homes and places like that that are in great need. They need something to give them hope, a purpose, whatever you want to call it. They feel useless and thrown away, and it just so enriches their life. Think about your mother or your sister or your aunt or your whatever sitting up in a nursing home and nobody going to visit them. I know you're going, well, I would visit my mother. Well, I would visit mine too. But these are not our parents. These are somebody else's parents, and they don't visit. I even asked the lady at the nursing home, will you tell me the people who are in most need? I want to make sure they get a doll first. And she said, absolutely. And so one time, well, a couple times, I just went and donated dolls and let her pass them out. But one time I went around and with her while she passed them out. And the joy on their faces when they saw those baby dolls. Some of them thought you were just letting them hold them. And then when you told them they got to keep them, they just cried and just were so happy. It was just such a rewarding feeling. And I don't know. Sometimes people will ask you to go down to some paltry little cheap amount. And you're going, before I give some cheapskate a bargain, I'd rather donate it to a nursing home. But if you're needing the money, you're needing the money. You know what I mean? And so we sometimes have to do what we have to do. That's him painted a second time. See, it didn't take us nearly as long this time. I went a little faster because y'all already know what I'm doing. Now I'm going to do his nails and his lips. This is our last go on that. So, we are ready for that. So here we go. I'm going to put the lid on this so it doesn't spill or whatever. Sometimes these lids, I tell you, you don't get them started straight, they won't go on. I'm going to get back out my little bitty thing of lip and nail color. I've been using this for probably over a year. And I'd have a way more in here, but I actually took paint out to make baby scratch stuff and stuff like that, and it diminished the amount I have in there. You use so little of these things that it's just it just lasts forever. In fact, the last 2 bottles I made, I ended up throwing away because they got too gunky to use. Every time you take the lid off, they're going to get a little thicker and a little thicker. And after a while, you're going, this is gunky. I'm going to make some new. His lips look absolutely great, but I'm going to put one more coat on them just to make sure they're smooth enough and dark enough. When we come back, we'll be just putting on his regular blush, his all-over blush. And we don't want to have to redo his lips on that step. I don't want to anyway. If you want to, feel free to do it. I try to get the lips and the nails right by the end of this coat that we just put on. And then, if I have to, by all means do it if you have to. But you can get your lips and nails to a really good color just by applying thin layers over and over again like I've been doing all through the making of this doll. And he'll have wonderful looking lips at the end. And they'll be plenty dark. And you won't need to put any on at the last coat. I mean, if you need to, go on, do it. If you think they need to be darker, by all means, do it. You want your doll to look good. I'm also going to swirl a little more in his nose. We want to make sure the nose has color. And the most color I can think of, I've never really looked up a baby's nose. You can't really see inside a real baby's nose. Not really, unless you're really trying hard. But on these vinyl dolls, their nose is so open, you can. His nails are a little pale, see? I'm going to put another coat on them. But you can tell they're getting darker and darker every time I paint them. And this coat will be a little bit thicker than the other coats I've put on before, because this is the last coat we're putting on him. Shaky hands. Oh my goodness, my hands are shaky. Just wait till I start trying to tip them. You ain't seen shaky hands until you see that. I don't know if you can even tell my hands are shaking, but I'm having a little trouble with this. Oh, that's too much. If you can tell you have any on your brush, it's probably too much. That is too much. See, I got too much on that nail, so I'm getting some of it off the brush, and then when you wipe it again, it'll pick up some of that. And this is only a piece of a nail, so I'm not even going to dip it for that one. There we go. There's that one. Now we're going to do this one. Oh, me. Shaky hands. You don't want to make... I was thinking about baby scratches here, and I was thinking about telling y'all this. Baby scratches are fun, and they can look cute on your doll and all that kind of stuff. But you don't want to make all your dolls have baby scratches. I try to limit one type of weird thing, what I'd call a weird thing, per doll. You don't want to give them a lip blister, and then a baby scratch, and then baby acne, and then, you know, in a mole. You don't want that many things on your doll that just look like a freak. Most babies don't have any of those things. So for your doll to have even one of them is special. But if they have too many of them, they start to be unspecial. They start to be past special all the way to weird. So baby scratch is my favorite one, and it's probably the easiest one to do too. Putting those little milk bumps on their nose, they just look like white freckles. I just think they look funny. Most people use too big of a brush or something. If I was doing it, I'd use the end of a toothpick and only put the tiniest dot that you can barely see. Because you don't want your doll looking like they have white freckles. Babies don't have freckles anyway, because freckles are caused from being out in the sun. And who puts their baby out in the sun where they can get freckles? They'd have to get a lot of sun exposure to get freckles. I have red-headed grandchildren and they're covered in freckles. But they didn't have any when they were babies, not a one. And speaking of red hair is the hardest. Well, blonde's pretty hard to pencil on. But red is nearly impossible. It's just so funny looking when you get it penciled on. And it's also hard to find any quality red hair to root. Most companies do not carry red hair. You have to go to that really, really highly expensive hair to get red hair. I can't find any red hair. I one time had some strawberry blonde and it was beautiful. But what they did was, the only thing they did to make it that color is they mixed some darkish blonde with some red. They actually mixed the hair together. See a little buildup between her toe there. Get it out with that brush. See how easy that was? It just came right out. You don't want to bake your doll with anything like that, because then it's permanent and you can't get it off. She looks good. He looks good. Almost all the dolls that I do are girls. I'll get in a spurt where I have a lot of boy dolls, and sometimes I make them into girls too. A lot of dolls, it's just about the clothes. You can actually, they look boyish to you because you're thinking boy and you know their name's a boy name. But when you get the clothes on them, they sort of do look girlish. Some of them are just very, very, very boyish looking. And putting girl clothes on them, they do not look like a girl. They just look like a boy in a dress. But some dolls, and this is one, he could just as easily be a girl as he could a boy. In fact, there's an open eye version of him called Lainey, and when you look at her, she looks like a girl. When I look at him, I see boy, because I just know that's what they are. But if I put girl clothes on him and didn't tell you his name, you'd never know the difference if he was a boy or girl. In fact, I think the next doll I do, I won't tell you their name, and I'm going to ask everybody, boy or girl, what do you see? And as we're going along, I'll ask it over and over again. What do you see now? What do you see now? And everybody can decide. And then at the end, I'll tell you their name. Because that way, you're not swayed by the sculpt name. In fact, some of the dolls that Bountiful Baby has posted on their website have a girl. I have a feeling they don't use the real child's name. A lot of them are grandchildren or nieces or nephews of the owners of Bountiful Baby. And I have a feeling they don't use their real names. Always. They may sometimes, because they have a doll named Alma, and in the description it says Alma is the nephew of such and such person. Okay, so it's really a boy, because I always thought it was a girl. And then there's another one that has a boy's name that they say is a niece. It could be a typographical error, but I don't know. I don't know that they disclose any information about their grandchildren, but a lot of these sculpts are from a long time ago. Like, I think they said Presley was the very first Reborn they ever did. And he was a limited edition. I have Presley asleep. I don't have Presley awake. I was lucky enough to look up on Presley asleep, and I bought him for $40. Somebody didn't see any value in that doll at all. And he was amazingly painted too. And I bought him, and he was very dirty, like somebody had put him in a toy box or something. And he'd been in there for a long time. He didn't have any hair. He was bald. So I cleaned him up real good, and I put one coat of paint on him and sealed him. And then I rooted his hair. And that's all I had to do to him. And I just wanted him a slight bit darker than he was. He was just a little pale to me. But he had amazing details, amazing. And so $40. Wow, and I gotta get that cornbread out of the oven. Hold on. tip about your cornbread. When you're trying to get it out of the oven quick because you think you might have left it in there too long, don't open the oven and bend straight down. That hot air will burn your face. It didn't leave blisters or anything, but you see this side of my face is all red now because I bent right down and looked in the oven. Anyway, we're going to get Liam in for his bake, and we'll be back to put his actual last color on him, which will be blush, and then he'll be ready to get some hair. And I don't put the lashes on until the very, very end, because if you put them on and then when you're rooting the doll, you're turning the head every which way. Sometimes they're laying face down, and it just crushes the eyelashes, and they just look funky. So I do them last when I'm about to put them together. But we're going to put him together on camera and everything, so you'll get to see every little step, even putting on the eyelashes. It's funny sometimes trying to put the eyelashes on. But anyway, please remember to like, subscribe, and share, and happy reborning.